When we talk of investment now, given 2018, you see what happened in Nigerian capital market. It fell to almost 11.7%, year on year. This is very critical because at the end of the day, at the beginning of last year, the first quarter of the year, you see the capital market rallied. And you see a lot of, based on the fact that at the end of 2017, we are judged one of the best investment climate in the world as Nigeria. So you see a lot of, FPIs coming to Nigeria. But you look at even the structure of Nigerian markets now, you see more of foreign players than the local players. So whenever there is any uptick outside there, you see a mass movement, which is, all the time creating the volatility within the Nigerian space, which is not healthy for us as a nation. So that is one. Two, you look at what is happening in the US. Last year, by the time you see the Federal Reserve, US Reserve, elevating their interest rates, it's a serious issue for Nigeria. Because what it means is that investors will definitely relocate to an environment whereby they are better situated and paid for. So it's very, very key to consider the fact that there is every need for a government to put in place the right reform. Let's look at what is happening as far as the capital market is concerned in Nigeria. For more than 2 years now, the Security and Exchange Commission has got no board to pilot the affairs. This ought to be a regulator. Again, almost 8 months now, we have been on acting capacity. These are the people that are going to put in place structures that is going to run, create an enabling environment for investors to come in here. So while so government play a very key role in, incentivizing the environment and creating an enabling environment for investors to strive on. So in terms of investment, there is still a lot the government needs to look at in order to create that environment, having in mind that we have a lot of global perspectives into a movement of foreign investment into Nigeria. Again, when we talk of the issue of power, I was having a discussion with some couple of guys, and I told them, as far as Nigeria is concerned, we are not lazy. In fact, if we're able to solve our power problem, 50% of unemployment issue will be solved. That's it. 50% of unemployment will be solved. Because you see an average Nigerian want to do something. Why is it that we go to other countries and we strive there, and we are not getting it there? So it's a major area that our government cannot but afford to do, something pragmatic. And I totally agree with Chike. It's a matter of, today, if any one of us, if you leave our house and we happen to forget our cell phone, we'd rather go back home to go and pick it. So let's ask ourselves, so how have we been living before the advent of cell phone? So now the regulation came into play, all of us will have access to it and things are working. So why must government play in the area they're not? I think the need for a mind shift is very, very key. Not only on the part of government, but on the part of the populace too. So the fact that government must be here, government has no business in business. They just to create an enabling environment and sensitize people that they need for power to be deregulated and allow people access to it. If you look at it today, the cost of buying fuel, there was a survey that was carried out and it was confirmed that even the consumption of fuel on a daily basis by household is more than the one utilized by cars. So it's a major issue. So when are we going to continue doing this? So there is need for deregulation along this path so that you allow people to, have access to what they want to use at any particular point in time. Is in this part of the world when most of us, when travel out of the country, when you want to leave your room, nobody tells you to switch off your light. Well, here we put it on 24/7 and because you don't even pay the right price for it and want to say we should leave it. So again, education, you cannot, it's a direct correlation between education and industrialization. So we can't take that anywhere. So if you're not getting it right, it's a major, major issue for us to look at education, for government to put in reforms there and ensure that, fine, to the extent that Charles said there has been an improvement. But to what extent has this improvement impact on where we ought to be as a nation and impacting and playing a role as it takes in the structure of the global space. So it's very key for us to look at the area of education and for government to put appropriate resource. And again, across all these three areas, we talk about the investment, we talk about the issue of power, we talk about the issue of education. We cannot but have a structured public-private partner. We need it. So that the government needs to come to terms as into whether we want to continue to run a social economy or capitalist economy. Because if not, we still continue with what we are doing.
When we talk infrastructure, I actually see infrastructure more than power. Although you talk about power, but I think there are several other infrastructures that are very important for investment success. So power is one. In our view, transportation is another one, because you can't produce in Kano and not get the goods to Lagos. So there's need for, almost like a critical review of transportation. And third is actually internet. You probably would say, what's the relevance of internet? But when you look at telecoms and look at 2001 and look at the impact of, moving from 350,000 telephone lines to 150,000 telephone lines, and you look at the impact on GDP growth, you see that there's a significant growth. And because we invest in Africa and India, so we're able to compare between Africa and India. And so, for example, if you look at Africa, or let me say, even if you look at Nigeria, and you look at where are the areas where you have internet connection, and you look at India, the whole of India has coverage. Nigeria is in patches. And so anywhere you have patches, it means that there is no service. So you can't get financial inclusion, really. There's nothing you can say, because if you don't have internet connection. So from our point of view, power is one, transportation is another one, and internet is another one. So that's on infrastructure. Another area where we think something needs to be done is funding of this infrastructure. So you look at, for example, you look at the pension industry, you look at the amount of money that is sitting down there, you look at how much is spent on infrastructure. From what I gather, in 2017, only 3 billion was spent on infrastructure. So the question is, why do you have, because there is savings. It's not that there's no savings in this country, there is savings. Maybe it's not as much as it should be, but it's significantly more than what we'd expect, because with the pension reform, there's a lot of money that is, kept with the PFAs. So the question is, how do you use that to drive infrastructure? Not only infrastructure, how do you use it to drive private sector participation, even in business? Because the money is sitting out there, and frankly, it's used by government, because what they're doing is buying government bonds and very few stock market. So I think that there are issues around that. Now, so I talk about currency very briefly. I think on currency, and I like what Mustafa said about, we don't have business to wear silk ties. So it's interesting, I'm the only one not wearing a silk tie. So the others, they have to look at themselves and see why they're wearing silk ties. But the key issue for me in that is to give some credence to what we've done. The CCI is for me, is a huge incentive for private sector investments offshore to come into Nigeria, where there is easy inflow of money and easy outflow of money. The import-export window, in my view, is also something that I think is commendable. However, the stability of the foreign currency, where it is almost like being held down, it gives me concern. Because what it means is that you don't even know, you can sit down today. I mean, if you sit down one day, we were at 150, and then the next day, or maybe not about, we got to like 500, which means we need to be careful how we manage it. It's better for it to be gradually devalued than for it to almost like be step, where you are 350 today, and then the next day, it just goes from 350 to 500. So I think these are areas that I see. There are a few other things I see that I think something needs to be done. Again, I'm talking more investment. You know, a lot of business in Nigeria or industries in Nigeria are fragmented. And the reason for that is they're not adequately capitalized. We don't like partnership. So I think, and a few things have happened. We've seen 89 banks become 25 banks, and they're all almost relatively stronger. I mean, that's not to say you won't have one or two that would have problems. But there's need to also do the same in important sectors, especially where they're regulated. Whether it's insurance, I know the insurance tried to do something and then there was almost like pushback and they had to reverse it. But I think there's need for that. I mean, Nigeria is one of those places where you have more stockbroking firms than companies listed on the stock market. You know, so there has to be something that is done. And if you look at the trades that are done with them, you see some people only do like one trade a month. So the question is, why give a license to somebody who is doing one trade a month? So I think the whole area of, you know, especially where businesses are regulated, there needs to be something done to see how we can make sure that they are more strengthened than the way they are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.